The electric vehicle revolution arrived. It just didn't look like what anyone thought it was going to look like. In this video, I want to share a breakdown of the timing issues around e-bikes, e-motos, and e-scooters, and what really caused the explosion in that type of vehicle, what the implications are for safety and for regulations, and what we need to do next to keep these vehicles safe and on the road as part of our overall transportation infrastructure. So let's get into it right now. All right, what you're looking at here is my applied case study on will the real EVs please stand up? So you can go, and I'm not going to go through all the detail on this, but I want to share a few key charts that help explain really what's going on here. The first one, I'm going to scroll down, is exactly what a personal electric utility vehicle really is. I'm calling them EUVs because there's actually a spectrum of vehicles that count. And when we just talk about e-bikes, we're really not getting the whole idea. If you've been to a bike store recently, you might have seen e-bikes, either ones that kind of look like regular bikes with an electric motor and a battery, or ones that kind of look like step-through cargo bikes. That's a couple of those, but they are just a few types of the broader spectrum that you've probably seen on the road. This chart is talking about that entire spectrum of two-wheeled, or in some rare cases, three-wheeled EUVs. Now, you've probably, if you've not been under a rock in any urban or suburban environment, you've seen kids zooming around on electric scooters. They used to be the Lime scooters and the city bikes and things like that in the urban cores. But I can tell you from personal experience that pretty much every kid I know under 16 has one of these things. And they are going everywhere. They don't tend to go that fast, but kids used to get a bike, and a lot of kids still get bikes. But now kids are getting scooters, and they're taking them everywhere. And you just have to be aware of that. If you're driving on the road right now, it's kind of crazy out there with scooters kind of zipping around. So you got to pay attention. If you move kind of up the way, there are commuter bikes, cargo e-bikes. I've seen these where they've got multiple car seats strapped in. Again, I've been to the bike store when I bought my mountain bikes 20, 25 years ago when I was big into riding. These things were lighter and lighter and lighter all the time. They weighed, a small number of pounds. These, the last time I went to the bike store, were 50, 70, or 80 pounds a piece because they're really cargo vehicles and transportation vehicles. We've got the high performance road commuters and mountain bikes and things like that that are kind of electric bike assist. And then basically electric motorcycles or e-motos. And you see these around that are basically motorcycles. They go 40, 50 miles per hour, but they put pedals on them. Why do they put pedals on them? They do that to kind of skirt around the regulation. If you have an electric motorcycle that doesn't have pedals at all, it's technically classified a motorcycle, and you need to get licensing, registration, all of that sort of stuff. How they get around that is you put these pedals on there, and either they're vestigial or they barely work, but they do provide a little bit of propulsion. So they tend to get kind of sneaky classified into an e-bike, which is like a class 3 e-bike that can go up to 28 miles per hour. But bluntly, I have seen these going much faster than that. So what's happened here is the adoption is going way past our regulatory and safety and normative frameworks out on the road. If you're a driver out there, you are fucking terrified of these things because they're on the sidewalk going 40 or even going 28. If you're used to, like I am, understanding how fast a bike just travels in your mind, and you see the bike over there and he's coming and you're going to turn, and instead of 10 miles an hour, he's going 3 times that fast, it's an easy way to have a really nasty accident. So again, we need to understand this broader context of electric utility vehicles as part of the overall transportation infrastructure because it's happening right now. So what do we mean by it's happening right now? I'll get back to this kind of what people are using it for, but we just have to sort of understand what's actually happening from a quantitative perspective here. This tracks EV auto sales and EV bike and EUV sales, and not even all EUVs, because only really e-bikes are included in this. So that red line is actually quite a bit higher than this. Notice that EV sales, these are on the same scale. These are not different scales. I'm not playing with anything here. This is actually the number of electric vehicles like Teslas and Rivians and plug-in hybrids that you can see out there, the BMWs and the Audis, all of those compared against e-bike and EUV sales. Notice that EUVs and e-bikes have outsold EVs in almost every year, and now are much higher. 2.2 million e-bikes sold last year compared to maybe 1.5 EVs sold, million EVs sold last year in the United States. What does that mean? Obviously, you've probably seen more Rivians and more Teslas on the road. That's obvious. But what you've probably also seen is a lot more e-bikes, a lot more e-motos, a lot more scooters. You are not hallucinating. These are becoming part of the transportation infrastructure. And you've got a Tesla on the road, or a Rivian, or an electric BMW. Those are cars like every other car. They operate like cars. They follow the traffic rules like cars, or they don't, like everybody else. But there's something you sort of expect. A bike going 30 in the lane next to you is not something most people are used to right now. And the dedicated bike lanes and sidewalks out there just aren't built for 30, 40, 50 mile an hour vehicles. So you're getting, and we'll talk about the safety implications in a few minutes, but people are getting hit, people are getting hurt, not just the riders, but pedestrians as well. What's interesting to me really is this second chart, which is talking about the combined EV and EUV share of the light vehicle market. Now, this number is comparing the number of electric vehicles, and if we think more broadly about transportation, EUVs, e-bikes, as part of the total number of vehicles sold in the United States. The number of vehicles sold has remained largely flat over the past 10 years. We got some spikes here and there, but what people are doing is, yes, EVs like Teslas and Rivians are taking more share as we go, and they're becoming a bigger part of the overall transportation market in the United States. But what people are not paying attention to is that if you combine EVs and EUVs, basically 1 out of every 4 vehicles sold in the United States is electric, and 1 out of 8 is a non-car. This is critical to understand because it's like, well, it's not just a bike. A bike is something that putters around at 8 to 10 to 15 miles an hour. We understand bikes. E-bikes are different. They not only go faster, they do new and different things. And that's what this chart up here is getting at. What are people doing? We have thought about e-bikes as basically a fitness bike with a motor on it for assistance. That is not what people are doing. People have taken a look at the e-bike and thought, I can do different stuff with that. It really solves real transportation issues that are going on in 3 key ways that are critical to understand. First is urban commuting and transit replacement. So basically, I don't have traffic congestion or parking or transit delays. I'm not sweating on the way to work. I take one of these e-bikes, I can kind of weave around things. I can get on the sidewalk. I can weave in between traffic. I'm just telling you what people are doing, not what you should be doing here. This is how it's working. And I know if you're in an urban core listening to this, you know exactly what's happening right now. People are taking these to work. The second use case is kind of a step up from there. People deciding, you know what, a $35,000 car, because the prices of vehicles have continued to go up. That's what has stagnated adoption of light passenger vehicles in the United States. They've just gotten too expensive for the average person. So as inflation cuts at wages and cuts at purchasing power, people are looking at alternatives to $35,000 cars or the car payment that comes along with that, and instead choosing a vehicle that is a tenth the price. And you could put on a credit card, or you could get secondhand on Craigslist or from the aftermarket for even cheaper than $3,500. So for a small family with maybe a kid to get to school, maybe you might have one car and you might have a cargo e-bike, which is basically a second car at a tenth the price of a second car. Again, I know a lot of people who are exactly doing that because of the expense. And then finally, think about all the gig workers. These are the people not driving the Amazon trucks and things like that. They are doing Uber Eats, they're doing small-scale deliveries for Amazon, especially in urban cores, but even in suburbia. It is way cheaper to be driving around one of those smaller vehicles for smaller packages. I can get 90% total cost reduction and deliver 2 times the number of packages in the dense core because I don't have to worry about gas. They charge on a 120 outlet almost anywhere. I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to find parking, which is almost impossible in some of these places. I can get right to the door, hit the key so that the pedals don't move and the thing is a brick. I make my delivery, I come back. It's so much faster and so much more affordable. So think, if you're a gig worker, you're doing Uber Eats, this is exactly the vehicle you're buying right now, because why would I want a $30,000 car when I can get a $1,000 e-bike and do twice as many deliveries with a much, much lower cost? I don't need registration. I don't need licensing. I don't need insurance. Think about that for a second. What we call this in the innovation business is regulatory arbitrage. What's happening here is that when technology adoption curves spike and they turn the S-curve and they go vertical, regulations and rules and norms almost always follow and lag behind that. There's just no way for the regulatory environment to really catch up. But when it does, it tends to be draconian, patchwork, and a total mess. And that's exactly what's happening. So when we go down and we start to take a look at these safety implications, I'll come back to the safety implications in a second, but the regulatory response, if we take a look at that same chart, January 2016, 2019, 2020, the pandemic era, we get a real spacing of just the very first e-bike regulations that are out there. It's a patchwork. It's kind of a mess. It's not really well designed. But again, there weren't that many of those out there, so it wasn't that big of a deal. You start to get into 23, 24, 25, 26, and we start to crack down. And the regulations, as you can read here, are sort of all over the place. It's battery testing and non-compliant bikes and people doing operating speed limits, outdated hardware, software, confiscations, all of this sort of reactive stuff, because it is a mess out there. And lawmakers are responding to the latest thing, which we expect them to do in a representative democracy, but it's always following, and we need a bit of a cleanup here. But the issue is real. And what I want to show you here is this chart there's a chart on fatalities here from 2017 to 2023, kind of where the confirmed e-bike fatalities, again, this is just fatalities, not injuries, which is a much bigger thing. Lithium-ion battery fires, we've got control loss, basically hitting a tree. Motor vehicle collisions are the big one, where the use case I was talking about, where someone turns in front of an e-bike, they just misjudge the speed. The collision is almost always fatal to the e-bike rider rather than the car. But pedestrian collisions are a big deal too. And those are the ones where it's like, hey, you hit someone walking. And that's what this video here is with this lady. She was 72. She was hit by an e-bike, spent a couple of weeks in the ICU. She's okay, but gosh, it's those sort of things with e-motorcycles and really fast vehicles. This is the big chart to pay attention to. This is U.S. e-bike emergency department injuries and hospitalizations over that same time period. Take a look at the adoption rate. This is that same curve we looked at here, where the adoption is really spiking, but look at what has spiked even faster. A 4,450% increase in ER-related injuries from about 751 to right here at the end, 4,454. I mean, it's heartbreaking. I don't know any other way to put this, that it is a terrible sort of situation. It is absolute carnage out on the roads. I've seen it here in my own adopted hometown of Naples, Florida. Something needs to be done. I totally understand where the regulators are getting at, but we need a smarter approach. And that's really what the last part of this paper kind of gets into doing, is starting to talk about the innovations that the manufacturers are doing, Turn Specialized Electric Bikes and Voloctrix. I may not be pronouncing that correctly. That's on me, not on them. Check them out. But they're getting at anti-lock braking, automated shifting, software controls on torque and wattage, better radar tracking to help riders judge distances and judge speeds when they're not familiar with that. All of those are great things, and I think the industry does have a role to play. But as citizens and as regulators, we need to be smarter. Industry cannot do all of this on its own. We need smarter regulations to help us integrate EUVs into the overall transportation architecture. Because bluntly, everyone, it's happening. Whether we like it or not, it's happening right now, and we need to keep people safe. We need to keep riders safe. We need to keep kids safe, and we need to open up the transportation infrastructure. So, again, you can read this on the industry side. Awesome, great stuff, but we need better regulatory innovation. I'm highlighting a few, I think 5 different pieces. Software-defined classes. So we're really thinking about, if police catch vehicles going faster than this, they can pull them over and ticket them like any other vehicle. This is really critical to do that. We need better corridors for what we call medium speed. What's happening right now is we have the car lanes and we basically have bike lanes and sidewalks. Well, that's great, but are the bike lanes really bike lanes anymore? Are we turning that into more of a medium speed corridor where we're going to need to be sharing the road with another class of vehicle? Now, this is going to give people the chokes on where are we going to fit all these lanes for these different types of vehicles. My response is, they're fucking going on there anyway, and we should have rules for this sort of thing. So we do need better rules for what a bike lane is, what a sidewalk is, and what a traffic lane is. And e-bikes and e-vehicles may be in the right lane with you in the future. We need skills training on social behavioral innovation. We need integrated driver's ed. We do need to update driver's ed across the board, generally with simulation, much better simulation, where people are in, like how we train pilots. Get into a simulated vehicle and start to see e-bikes and start to be able to judge speeds. It is already very dangerous for 16, 17, 18-year-olds on the road in cars. Think about that with the vehicles they are choosing to buy instead. That also gets to licensing and making sure that any vehicle you are taking out on public roads that has a motor on it probably needs to be licensed, and you need to make sure that you're registering these vehicles. The 2 more. One on business model innovations. We do need, the cost to come down. This is a little bit of a sticky wicket on some of the imported vehicles and gray market imports from China and overseas. But again, we do need cheaper options because they are happening, and we want to make sure that people have access to low cost but high quality equipment with the right software, right batteries. And then finally, retail innovation. I feel like when you go to a bike shop to go and talk about e-bikes, they were kind of adopted inside the bike shop as a new product they could have, which awesome, that's great, but people are not thinking of these as bikes. I feel like going to a e-bike or an EUV dealership, much in the same way you might go to a car dealership, doesn't have to be like the weirdo kind of situation we've got set up with car dealers. That's a total mess. But embedding EUV dealerships more like the new Tesla and Rivian dealerships, where there isn't that same sort of dealer sort of relationship. It's no salespeople, kind of that weird thing going on. But being able to go in and actually have a showroom of EUVs where you can learn about them and you can kind of figure out what the right choices are. Because people right now are going to YouTube and Reddit and trying to figure this out. Actually going to a dealership where you can be trained, you can take it out on practice roads, and you can really see how fast they go and how to work the cargo. These are all critical innovations needed that don't have a lot to do with industry. Industry can play a role, but we need to step up and advocate for better, smarter regulations that don't limit this market, because when you limit a market like that, what ends up happening is people will find ways around it, like we're doing now. And that is quite literally killing people in the streets. So that's it for this video today. I've gone through this a lot. I will leave a link to the full article in the comments so you can take a look at it. What are your thoughts? What have you seen with e-bikes and EUVs on your streets? And what do you think are the right regulations that will help us encourage this trend, share the road, build a more flexible transportation infrastructure, while at the same time keeping everybody safe? Until the next one, see you then.